Hey team, it's Matt from Universal CPA Review. Thanks for checking out this video, which will walk you through an example simulation on data visualization, right? And this is something you could see on the BEC section of the CPA exam. Now, real quick, if you have not yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do so. It will allow us to keep adding more and more content here. If you're looking for some Facebook study groups, please join our groups. The links are in the description of this video. You can also sign up for a free 14-day trial, which will give you 100% access to the platform. And then lastly, if you're thinking about buying some materials or you need to make a change to your review program, please reach out to us, ask about our promotions, and definitely ask us about the Spilt Milk program. Now let's dive into this video. There's no better time to attack this simulation on data visualization. So the first thing that we're going to do is go through an overview of the simulation. It's really important to understand what the simulation wants us to do, what exhibits exist, and ultimately the questions that we need to answer. Now we'll go through and we'll read some of the research reports, and at the same time, we're also going to answer the questions. So let's get started with the overview. So as the simulation prompt says, basically we're a financial analyst at Greyrock, and they're an investment firm located here in the US. Now our boss has asked us to analyze 4 companies that Greyrock is considering investing in. And what Greyrock does is they hire external consulting firms to prepare research reports. And then as the analyst, we can use those research reports to help make an informed decision on the investment. Now, ultimately, we have 4 research reports for 4 different companies. We're going to have to go through and answer a couple questions about each of them. So we'll dive into those questions one at a time, all right? And real quick, make sure you understand exactly what we're doing here, right? On the left in column A, we have the questions. In column B, this is where the drop downs are going to be, and this is where we plug in our answers. So the first company we're going to analyze is Yellowstone Electronics. So bringing up the research report that was prepared by electronics consulting experts, well, it starts off telling us a bunch of, information that's nice. It tells us that the company uses virtual reality headsets to help their customers simulate what the electronics would be like in their own home. Now, as you can see, there's this big blob of chart, right? And ultimately, the first question we need to answer is what type of data visualization was used in this research report. So when I look at it, right, I see the different products, and it looks like the size of the box is supposed to represent some sort of proportion, right? And the research report tells us that it's illustrating revenue by product. Now, what kind of chart is this, or data visualization chart is this? This is going to be a tree map chart. Now, here's really quickly the tree map visual from the lecture and study guide, right? These two look very similar. So a tree map chart is the first answer to the question for Yellowstone Electronics. Now, the second question says, what product type has the least amount of revenue for Yellowstone Electronics? Well, the way that a tree map chart is interpreted is that the product with the largest area covered, right, means it has the highest proportion of revenue compared to the overall revenue. So that's going to be flat screen TV. Now this is asking about the least amount of revenue, so we're going to be looking for the smallest area. And it's hard to see, but that's going to be accessories. So in the drop down, choose accessories. So moving on to Carmel Golf Outfitters. Again, we'll pull up the research report, taking a quick glance at the questions. Well, we need to figure out what type of data visualization was used in the report, as well as some information about the change in revenue for golf bags, right? So let's attack the first question. And when we look at this, right, we see something that resembles a bridge, right? We're bridging basically revenue from year 5 to year 6. And then in between, we have all the different product categories. And some of them are green and some of them are red. Well, this is called a waterfall chart. what we do here is we take the change in revenue between the years by product, and that helps us understand how revenue changed and what ultimately was the driver of that change. So for example, golf clubs, revenue increased by 0.8, and this is in millions. For golf bags, it also increased by 0.4 million. For golf shoes, it actually decreased 0.7 million, right? So you get the point. That's how we analyze and interpret a waterfall chart. But waterfall chart is going to be the option in the drop down to select. So in the second question for Carmel Golf Outfitters, it says, if golf bags had 2.3 million of revenue in year 5, how much revenue did golf bags have in year 6? So again, we just need to take a look at our waterfall chart. For golf bags, it actually went up 0.4 million. So add that to 2.3 million, and that means in year 6, we had revenue of 2.7 million, right? So make sure you understand how to interpret and analyze a waterfall chart. The next company is AX Cloud Hosting. So let's bring up the research report for that company. And you can read through the top part, but ultimately, we need to understand that AX Cloud Hosting, they have 2 key revenue channels that they categorize their customers by. It can either be SMB or enterprise. Now this chart, it has the revenue by channel for the last 3 years, and that's going to be the blue and the orange columns. And guess what? I just gave it away, right? Our first question was what type of data visualization was used in the research report. That's going to be a column chart, and a column chart is when the data is presented vertically. Remember, if it's horizontal, that's a bar, right? So I brought up the visual from the lecture and study guide. You can see they both go vertically. That's going to be a column chart. Now the second question for AX Cloud Hosting, it says, did SMB revenue increase, decrease, or remain unchanged from year 6 to year 7? So SMB is the blue, and we're focused on year 6 and year 7. Well, we don't know exactly what the amount of revenues are. It's hard to tell, but we can see that it definitely increased, right? It looks like it went up from about 200 all the way to around 800. But either way, revenue increased, right? So increase is going to be the correct drop down. The fourth and final company that we need to analyze is Boobaloo Industries. So bringing up the research report from Bing Consulting, again, we can read the top part. We see that Boobaloo, they manufacture vehicles, motorcycles, scooters, boats. It just seems like every sort of power vehicle. And the key thing that we need to read is actually this second paragraph. And it says that they pulled together the amount of R&D spend by product as well as the year-over-year growth and gross margin. So what's interesting about that, right, is that there's 3 variables included in this data visualization. Well, we can see on the y-axis it has year-over-year growth, gross margin, that's on the x-axis. But where is the R&D spend by product? Well, that is actually represented in the size of the bubble. And I gave it away, right? A bubble chart is when the data point, its size is relative to other products in this, right? So if it has a high amount of R&D spend compared to other products, it's going to have a bigger bubble. If it has a lower amount of R&D spend compared to other products, it's going to have a smaller bubble. But this is called a bubble chart. And don't get this confused with a scatter plot, because again, the key benefit of a bubble chart is that we can plot and compare 3 different variables. So in the drop down, you can choose bubble chart. Now the second question requires us to interpret the chart, which again, if you can interpret it, then you definitely understand this chart. So it says basically which product has the lowest amount of R&D spend. And I briefly mentioned that the size of the bubble, it's based on relative R&D spend to other products. The bigger it is, the higher the spend. The lower it is, the lower the spend, right? It's all relative. And the item or product that has the lowest amount of R&D spend is going to have the lowest or smallest bubble here. That's going to be the scooter, right? The black circle. We can see significantly smaller than the rest. So scooters, well, they have the lowest amount of R&D spend. So that's going to be the correct answer in the dropdown. So I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, wow, that was a great simulation. Even better explanation. If I had to give 2 key takeaways from this simulation, it's that when it comes to data visualization, make sure you understand the various types of charts or graphs that you could see and be able to identify them by name. And then also think about how you would interpret those. Because ultimately, if you can't interpret the charts or the graphs, then you probably don't understand it, right? So think critically and how to interpret those, and you'll be all set for this topic on the exam.